This is Shawn Crystal. Catch the Inkpulp podcast on Pharcyde TV Wednesdays at noon Pacific time, 3 o'clock Eastern time. Come hang. Peace. This is the Inkpulp podcast. This is the Inkpulp podcast. Comics, hip-hop, life. Two years ago, a friend of mine asked me to say some MC rhymes. I got Run DMC in my head today. I don't know why. I've been doing that all day. I mean, I know why. I was watching that Beastie Boys documentary, and there's so much Run DMC in there. But that documentary is fucking incredible. It's such a wonderful and unique and interesting story. And I mean, you do realize, like, right place at the right time for them was so much. But they were three really talented. Well, two were one really talented individuals. And it's just an inspirational story on being an artist, being creative, learning how to be yourself as an artist in a commercial industry. Lots of stuff like that. So, Run DMC on the mind. A couple months ago, I'm sitting in Stankonia Studios in Atlanta. I gotta let that one sink in, because I still am just kind of rocked that this happened. So let's back it up. If you've listened to this podcast, you know I'm friendly with Killer Mike. If you've listened to this podcast, you know I'm working on a project with Mike in Cuz Lightyear. So part of that project is they want me in the studio with them while they're recording for this project. But on this occasion, I was asked to, well, let's rewind it. Before COVID hit, Mike called me and said he needed me in the studio for the project because T.I. was coming in to record something with them, and he wanted me to get introduced to this project in that sort of capacity. Well, COVID hit, and that was the end of that. So once we get through the thick of it and we start to get an understanding of what we're dealing with, and Georgia does open, well, then Mike says, all right, come on down to Stankonia, and we're going to sample the album for you. So it's Cuz, Mike, me, and the audio engineer. So, I mean, that's, you know, for me, that's such a big part of my love of hip-hop is Outkast and that studio. So all that day that I was going down there, I just had Outkast albums playing back to back. I drove down there so excited, so happy, and I pulled, you know, it's downtown, I pull in. It's sort of a residential area with a couple of, like, businesses and offices off to the side, and it's the most unsuspecting building. It just, like, you're at the back of this building and there's no signage. It's not welcoming at all. Like, the front door is just like like it looks like a back door. And so I guessed that was it. I was looking at the cars in the lot, and it appeared to me that, you know, Mike and Cuz were there because of the cars I saw. And I buzzed the little buzzer, and the voice comes over. And it's not "Welcome to Stankonia Studios." It's like, I don't remember exactly, but the gist of it was, yeah. And I'm like, I'm here to see Mike. And they said Mike something. Not like a last name, a name I hadn't heard. I was like, no, Mike Render, Killer Mike. And they're like, oh, go to the side door and we'll buzz you in. So I walk around the side of the building to another door that just, it's like an old looking brick building, looks kind of dingy from the outside. And the door, like I get there, I'm waiting, and then the door opens. And that like aluminum metal looking door from the outside opens, and it's this beautiful wood paneling on the inside of it as it opens, and right in front of me I see a recording studio, and I see Mike and Cuz in there. And so I go in, and I'm nerding out, man. To be here, like just on a fan level, was huge for me, but to be there because I'm a working part of a project that has something to do with that was a whole nother level for me. And that's a moment where you take inventory and you celebrate with yourself that you have had some pretty incredible things happen with your artwork, Shawn. So I get in there and the music's playing loud, and I know it's the project, and Mike's got ribs for everyone, so we're eating some ribs and just listening to music, smoking some weed, and it's like a dream. Like I'm taking pictures and sending them back home to my wife, just like this is crazy. And I just received my new sketchbooks, Drip, if you have one. If not, they're on the Essential Sequential website right now, and they're half off through the holiday season if you're interested. But I had these new books, and Mike's a fan of my art, and Cuz is a fan of my art, so I wanted to give them each one. I had some pins, and I had a few extras, because you just never know who you're going to come in contact with. You don't want anyone to feel left out. And I gave the audio engineer one, and I had a couple more. And Mike was like, let me get one of those from my homeboy NuFace. Now, NuFace is a name I've known from Instagram. I didn't know him and Mike were close friends, but I knew they were familiar with each other. So what I knew of NuFace was he was everywhere in Atlanta hip-hop and beyond, in the world of hip-hop. If you just go to NuFace's Instagram, you just see pictures of him with every hip-hop artist you can imagine. He's an Atlanta guy, and to me, I didn't really understand what he did. I just knew that he was a part of this community in some way. I knew he didn't rap. I knew he sold some clothing. I didn't know at the time that he was an artist himself. And so when Mike said that, I was like, oh, I know NuFace. Sure, I'd love to give him one. And I did a little sketch in it for him, and gave it to Mike, and I wrote a little note in it for NuFace. And then I come to find out my friend Steve West, who's a photographer I know in Atlanta, he's photographed Mike a bunch. He photographed all of my stuff you see on the internet. And Steve's good friends with NuFace. And then I learned Mike's also good friends with NuFace. So I wanted to have NuFace on my podcast. I'm more and more, I'm wanting to reach outside of the world of comics, and I want to more and more reach into the world of hip-hop. And this dude, NuFace, from my perspective, is just tied into the fabric of Atlanta hip-hop, and he'd be a great guest. And I honestly didn't expect to hear back from him when I DM'd him. I didn't expect him to know who I was at all. I had followed him, and he hadn't followed me, but after I DM'd him, I saw he followed me very quickly and responded very quickly that he'd love to do it. And so we set it up, and I was really excited. I was like, I don't know, I've never even spoken to this dude, and it's not that often where I do a podcast with someone I've never even spoken to. So it's a little bit nerve-wracking on my end. I mean, I know I'll do a decent job on my end. But when it's someone I have no rapport with, and I know very little about, it's a little daunting, but on the flip side of that coin is it's wide open, and it could be an incredible, engaging conversation of discovery. So I did a little research before we podcasted and came to find that he was an artist too. And that's all I knew going in. And that's where we went. I just rolled with it. So that's who NuFace is, and that's what this podcast is about. It's me getting to know him, me learning about him and his role in hip-hop, especially in Atlanta. And I also knew before the podcast, just days before, it was the Jeezy Gucci Mane verses. And NuFace was there. So I knew I wanted to hear from someone who was there the story of being there. Because the day after that happened, the Atlanta hip-hop community, there was a lot of like beautiful emotional posts that these two Atlanta monuments of Atlanta hip-hop had come back together and had settled and worked things out in a creative and productive manner. And everyone was saying, on that day, Atlanta won. And I felt like it was a really important moment in the history of Atlanta hip-hop. So I was really interested in trying to capture a first-hand telling of what that was like. So we do have that too. And that was really exciting to hear. And, you know, I wasn't as familiar with the beef between the two rappers before this. I had come to really like Gucci Mane probably in the last couple years. Just writ him off, like I wrote him off, like I did a lot of rap. Because there was a period where I was just all underground and didn't want to hear anything, especially from the South. This is due to No Limit Records. I did not like anything that they were doing or putting out. There have been some great artists that have come up the ranks with that, like Currency. But I just felt like Gucci Mane was that. And I was wrong, and I gave him a chance a couple years ago and fell. I really liked what I was hearing and got into him. Jeezy I always liked as a guest rapper. I liked the sound of his voice. I guess I never got into his records. I've tried a couple times. I want to give it a better try. I enjoy what I've heard. I really like when I hear him on guest spots, but I just didn't know. Like, I moved to Atlanta, you know, I knew Outkast. I knew Killer Mike through Outkast. I knew Goody Mob. I knew the Dungeon Family. Outside of the Dungeon Family, I was pretty ignorant and not very open-minded. That has all changed. I love Atlanta hip-hop now. I feel like, you know, growing up in the Northeast and having my entire family in New York City, I was close to the epicenter of hip-hop my whole life. And then I moved to the South. And I didn't realize I would end up living in the new epicenter of hip-hop in Atlanta. And I love that. And this podcast with NuFace is a big part of me growing my roots into the hip-hop scene in Atlanta even more. I feel like more and more with the projects I'm doing, with the way my art is progressing right now, I am becoming tangentially a part of the hip-hop community. And that excites me, and I love that because I have so much love and respect and passion for hip-hop music. So I just want to get more and more into the community. So that's what today's about. I hope you enjoy it. If you're new to the podcast, thank you for listening. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Please like this post, and feel free, or not feel free, please comment. I respond to all comments. Thank you, NuFace, for doing this. Much love, much respect. And follow me across my social media at Inkpulp, INKPULP. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I have a TikTok. I don't use it much. And as I've already said, I've got some really interesting projects coming out with hip-hop artists. So follow me now and watch it Watch it progress. Watch it grow. Other than that, thanks for your time. Enjoy. Peace.
And you're Shawn. That's what you go by?
Yeah, Shawn. Perfect. All right, so I'm sitting here today with NuFace from Atlanta. I'm going to switch my camera so we can see me work on this Spider-Man painting. Thanks for coming on, NuFace. So I don't know where to start with you. I got so much I want to talk about. I've come to know you before Mike even mentioned anything. I've just come to know you through Instagram. You seem to be involved in Atlanta hip hop on every level. Is that like kind of fair to say? You seem to be in the mix.
Definitely safe to say. I've been in Atlanta since 1994, so to say I have my hands on the pulse is probably an understatement, because I've probably seen the evolution of record labels come from the crunk music, from the snap music, to the era of Dungeon Family, to the Outkast, to the, like you said, Killer Mike, his evolution from him as a solo artist with Big and Andre, to Run the Jewels, just to see the evolution. So most definitely, I'm from Detroit, Michigan, but I've been here since 1994 in Atlanta, Georgia.
And how did you get so intertwined with the hip hop scene here in Atlanta?
Well, basically starts at home. One of my greatest experiences and memories ever was going to the mall with my father, and he bought me an Adidas tracksuit, black with 3 stripes, the pair of shoes. He bought one for myself and my cousin, and we kind of all matching. And then from that day, I was like, okay, this is pretty cool. Like that could have been the best day ever at that point. But then we proceeded to go to Cobo Hall, and there actually was a concert going on, something that would later be known as the Fresh Fest. So once we got inside there were three white boys on the stage jumping around, and I'm just like, okay, well, this is cool. Everybody, and I heard No Sleep Till Brooklyn, and I'm hearing all these songs. I'm like, okay, that's the Beastie Boys. And then after that, we see one gentleman on the stage, and it was just him in a spotlight, and it was just him sitting on the radio, and that ended up being LL Cool J, followed by the closers, which was Run DMC. And ironically, the best part was that when they had this point of their show, and they're like, everybody that got Adidas, take your shoes off and lift them in the air. And I'm like, oh, and I'm seeing other people do it, and I'm like, I get it. My father bought me Adidas, so I get to be a part of this too. Let me pick my Adidas up. And so I've been, from that point there, I was introduced from hip hop at a young age. And then I just, from the family around, my father was big on music, soul, and Barry White and George Clinton and all that. So I was around him while he was listening. But with hip hop, I had younger cousins and uncles who kind of listened to it. So I would kind of go and ride passenger side in their cars, and I was be introduced in all these members and all these eras. So definitely that's where it kind of derived from and was born from. And then Atlanta just took it to a whole nother level, because once I heard Outkast in '94 Players Ball, and I heard all these references and all these food places in the MARTA, and it was just like, I need to find a way to get down there, because this is like my type of scene. This is my type of vibe right here.
Right. I love that origin story of going to the Fresh Fest and seeing all those acts. That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
What a great... I mean, if that doesn't get you hooked on this, I don't know what will.
And ironically, I got to be on live with LL Cool J, and I was able to tell him that story. And like, I just still remember being on live, and although it's on Instagram, like my hand was shaking. Like it's weird. Like, it's not he's in my face, but it's like I'm talking to him and he's responding, and he's like, and I'm showing him stuff in my collection of him, and he's like, oh man, like he's so excited and he's enthused. And I'm like, yeah, that's kind of what I do it for. But just to see the evolution of him being the first hip hop artist I ever seen perform, to me, actually being able to tell him that story, like you just never dream of that type of experience. So that was an honor.
Yeah, I got to work on a project with DMC, a comic book project, and got to, he came to a convention here in Atlanta, and we sat at the booth together all day long while I was drawing and signing the books next to him. And my kids got to meet him. We just got to chat all day. And it's sort of the same thing where I got to tell him how much of an impact he had on my life, because like you, I was a little kid and heard Run DMC, and it just changed everything for me. I was just hooked on it from that moment on.
Yes, indeed.
So that was
And
dope.
ironically, I worked at Hard Rock, and they had an opportunity because I was like, again, known as a hip hop head at that point. So there was an exhibit. They wanted to do a memorial for Jam Master Jay, excuse me. And so I made this shirt that said R.I.P. JMJ. They put it inside a frame with some Adidas that was signed by Jam Master Jay with an Adidas sweater. And it was showcased at the Atlanta Hard Rock, and then it was taken to New York. But before it transitioned, DMC came here, I think, during that time, because the comic book, he was introducing that. So he got to see it in his frame, and then it went to Hard Rock in New York. So that was another dope thing for me to be able to celebrate him, and for him to be able to see it and show his appreciation as well. That's always one of my goals too, just to kind of give people their flowers in public.
Yeah, so that was probably around the same time that I was with him that you were doing that. So you became a collector of hip hop memorabilia. Is that what's going on?
Yeah, well, it probably started with me just buying the music, buying the cassettes, buying the vinyl, buying this. Well, it took me a long time to even transition to CDs, but buying VCR tapes and VHS, excuse me. But really, like, the collection started with comic books. Like, probably before hip hop was introduced to me, I had comic books from the Fantastic Four, Thor issues, G.I. Joe. I just remember like early comic books, and I would see my cousin drawing them, Incredible Hulk comic books. So that was before hip hop. I think comic books kind of was my main focus, and toys too. You know, back then you had Saturday morning cartoons and Masks and Transformers and Silver Hawk. So it's just, back then it was a totally different era, but I was able to just be enthralled in all of it, and I was engulfed in all of it.
Yeah, that's my era, and it's a very similar story for me as it is for you. For me, it was watching that Spider-Man cartoon when I was a kid that just got me hooked on wanting to do this. So you just had that collector DNA in you.
Yeah,
from
definitely.
The start. So, and let me touch on this. You're an artist as well, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So talk to me about that. Is that how you kind of got in the door with a lot of the hip hop artists? Was you being an artist as well?
So yeah, that's probably was the start. I started in Detroit. I was in commercial art classes. I took graphic design. I took architecture classes. I used to make shirts in high school and middle school. I would draw. Back then, they had, remember, iron-on crayons. So whatever you draw with the crayon and colored it, you basically flipped it and you ironed it on the shirt.
Right.
So I would do that with Simpsons. I would do that with Bart Simpsons and characters, and put shorts on them and kind of hip hop them out. And I would sell those in middle school and high school. And then I would just kind of remix other stuff and Bugs Bunny and Taz and do all that type of thing and give people custom shirts. So it really started there, but also just drawing. Actually, I used to draw, and it was a campaign to be a class president in high school. And I just saw it was an opportunity to be able to draw and be able to plaster posters all over the high school. And so I took that opportunity to do so, drawing Ren and Stimpy and drawing rap covers and saying vote for Larry Compton for class president. And ironically, I wasn't expecting it, but I ended up winning. I ended up becoming senior class president. And I must say it had to be because of the art, because I wasn't kind of participating in everything I was supposed to, or I wasn't campaigning. I just wanted a reason to show my art around the school and plaster artwork on the lockers and bathrooms all over. So that art transitioned into that. So it showed me how powerful art and being creative could get you.
Yeah. That's a really important message. Art is extremely powerful and can do amazing things.
And then, like you said, I was drawing too, and I was painting. And so once I got here, like, so all these behind me are paintings that I've done myself. And what I noticed is back then, at least when I got to Atlanta, you would tell people you're an artist, but in their head, without actually physically seeing, it's just a thought. And then you would probably have to follow up and say, well, if you want to come over to the studio, you see this. So I wanted to find a better way where people can see your talent. So I end up just basically, instead of painting on canvases, I use T-shirts as my canvas. So I would buy blank T-shirts, and whatever I was gonna draw on canvas, I end up drawing on shirts. And if I listen to music, or if a rapper said a line that I like, I would end up writing that, painting it on a shirt. And then if they were shooting a video, I'd pull up and say, here's a gift from me to you, no matter what they did. And sometimes they end up wearing it in a video, or a comedian, same thing, they'll end up wearing it on stage. And so it just showed me once again the power of promotion and marketing. If your talent was there, people would love to support it. So that's where I transitioned from canvas to actual clothing and shoes, and I was customizing hats and things like that. So that's where the NuFace kind of came from.
Okay. Do you remember like the first time you got in front of a hip hop artist you were a fan of?
Too Short, like? Probably Too Short.
Oh, shit.
Too Short and Uncle Luke from 2 Live Crew, because this was back in Detroit. So while celebrities came there, it was rare that you would see them so often as you did in Atlanta. Like Atlanta, I can go to Publix right now and probably run into Ludacris and Jeezy and Mike, and it'd be like nothing. But in Detroit, it was very rare. So it was very scarce. But when I did, still, I just waited in line. Like it would either be an album list, and I would always look out for like album signings back then, album without streaming. You would actually have a whole promo run, and people would go to radio stations, and they'll go to a tape store, do a signing, and then go to a couple ones, and they'll do a show, and then there'd be an after party. So I kind of had my ear to the streets with that and finding out where they would be. And I would just be the fan. I'll wait in line, and when buy the music, you wait in line, you get an autograph. And even back then I was, I had disposable cameras, so I was always documenting it, and I was taking pictures of it then. It's just weird looking back what even inspired that. But I do have multiple pictures of way back in the day of just me waiting in line and getting it signed and kind of being out the way. Like I didn't want to kind of take up time, because I've seen other people kind of do it, and it's like, oh, you remember me from 1988, and my mother braided your hair, and I used to baby, like, so I never wanted to be that person. Right. But then it transitioned into the artist recognizing me so much with every album run, and then I would come and have some other stuff to sign, and then it just became known for that, and it was always not asking of stuff. I always see people, can you listen to my demo? Can you check out my artist? Right. I never wanted to be that person where I wanted them to do anything for me. I always wanted to either give or show some type of love and respect and acknowledgement for them. So I think that's kind of what made me different in the eyes of some of my favorite artists that I've met.
Yeah, I was the same way. I've met a lot of hip hop artists over the years, and for me, it's always been about like wanting to give them an original piece of work, because of their music had inspired me for so many years, and so much of my art is like their music is responsible for what I've been doing.
Yeah, and that's really I'm glad you said that, because that's really all it is. If I'm listening to Killer Mike for hours on hours on hours while I'm creating, the only way I can say thank you besides a simple thank you is, yo, I created this piece while listening to your music for 24 hours, and here's a gift from me to you.
Exactly.
Like, as simple as that. I didn't need anything else, but this is a thank you, because you probably got me through a point, or you got me out of a creative block, and the music kind of helped you transition out of that. And so that was just my way of saying thank you to the artist for what they've done musically for me.
That's exactly how I felt. We haven't met, so I don't even know if you know this. The way I met Mike was, this is a long time ago. I'm well before there was a Luke Cage TV series. This is probably around the time the first Iron
before
Man.
Run the Jewels?
No, it was right before Run the Jewels 2 came out. So I got Killer Mike's rap music. that was all produced by LP, and that album blew my mind.
Yes.
And then when Run the Jewels 1 came out, I was hooked. So I was like, they were my favorite rap band at the time, and they were still very much underground. So before Run the Jewels 2 came out, Marvel gave me a job on a book called The Illuminati. And they asked me for the first fight scene, what 2 New York Marvel heroes would I want to draw? And I mean, for me, I'm always dying to get my hands on Luke Cage and Iron Fist, the heroes for hire. So I asked them if we could use them, and they said, "Oh, of course." So I was really, really inspired to draw this fight scene that opened the book with the heroes for hire. And they were like, "Now remember, Luke Cage at this point." They're like, he's not in the tiara with the gold shirt. He's in street clothes. That's who Luke Cage is now. I was like, all right, I got you. And in my mind, I was like, well, he'd be a hip hop dude. So I put Luke Cage, like, this big splash page of him, like, walking through a wall that had just been demolished, and Iron Fist behind him. But I put Luke Cage in a Run the Jewels t-shirt. And it was they were so underground at the time that Marvel didn't even like pick up on it. So it made it to print. So when it came out, I tagged up on, like, I was like showing it online and tagged up Mike and LP, and then Mike started DMing me, and then we became friends after that. But the whole point of that was, I said to him, I was like, I'd love for you to own this page, because for me, this is like my childhood dream, working for Marvel Comics and getting to draw these 2 heroes. And what's getting me through it is Run the Jewels music. So I gave him that page, and then we just kept chatting after that. When did you meet Mike?
Outcast days, like, as he was an artist on Purple Ribbon, his first solo album during the whole I Ain't Never Scared Bone Crusher run.
Right.
But I'll say introduced musically wise, but personally, he was an artist that came out with an album called I Pledge Allegiance to the Grind.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
again,
I know it.
That was a project that mentally got me through a rough patch of my life that I listened to, and it was motivational, it was inspirational, it was like my version of Tony Robbins. And I would listen to it, and I would listen at least for the intro alone. Like, if you work for somebody, you're not a boss. Your worth, you're only as big as your worth. Your net worth, your work ethic determines your worth. Like, it was all these powerful messages that I was listening to. And so it was that kind of, I wanted to make sure he knew that I supported him, and that he knew that he inspired me so much. So once again, I used art. Of course, he would always say, "Grind time rap gang, bang, bang, bang." So every time I saw that or heard that phrase, it reminded me of the Joker when he would have those guns in the comic books, and the gun would go off, and not a bullet wouldn't come out, but a flag would come out and says bang.
Right.
So I end up drawing that on a shirt form. But he was at a V103 car and bike show. I actually have a picture of him, and I was just saying, "Thank you. I'm NuFace. I have a clothing line." And even then, he held up my flyer that said NuFace and took a picture. And I said, "The next time I see you, I'm going to have a shirt for you." And then probably maybe a week later, he was at Hot 107.9, the radio station. They do a morning show at 6 to 10. And around 7 a.m., I pulled up because I heard he was on the air. I drove down there fast. I had the shirt, and then I have another picture where he's holding up the shirt, and it says "Grind Time Rap Gang," and then 3 times it's bang, bang, bang. And so that's where we kind of personally met. But actually, and again, when I was, I used to have a business renting cars. You know, Avis Rent-A-Car?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was an independent franchisee of the location in Stone Mountain. So I was renting cars. So him and his manager, Joe, they would do shows, but they would always need maybe a 12-passenger van. So but when I had the business, they apparently had already been renting. And it was always Joe that was coming in, and I never put the two together until one day Mike came in and said, and I put the two together, and I'm like, wow. Like, so we were actually doing business together. He was renting 12-passenger vans, and I was renting them out for him. And he was actually a customer of mine. So again, those type of relationships. And even then he had goals of owning a barbershop, and he was transitioning to a solo artist and maneuvering through that independent game. So it's just, and that was all online. Like, that's just me randomly. And like, you know how Toonie is on the internet. Like, it's not even a point where I like kind of add him or shout him out. I'm just my everyday thing. I listen to his music so much that he'll see it maybe on his timeline and he'll repost it. And he's like, always, thank you. Your words mean a lot. And I know you're there as a fan. And like, he's always acknowledging it. So it's just kind of camaraderie, mutual love and respect. So it's probably been a good over 20 years of our friendship and support of each other.
He's a really amazing person.
Yeah.
I mean, I just feel very lucky to know him. Every time I'm with him, it's just blessings.
And one story I always like to tell is like, my uncle came to town and he had some Jordans on, and we're from Detroit, so sometimes you want to match our clothes. So he wanted to go to Lenox Mall and find a Jordan shirt that'll go with his shoes. We couldn't, and it was right at the start of the pandemic, so it was kind of a line, and we were looking, and so he couldn't really find anything. So I said, let's take a trip down into the swag shop, to the Mike's Barber Shop on Edgewood. Went there, he got to see the tree, got to meet all the staff, see the merch and everything. He bought him a shirt.
Oh, nice.
And he found a shirt to match. But what makes it better, what made it better for me and for him, is once we got home, I called Mike up on FaceTime, and Mike answers. And I'm saying, you know, my uncle came to town, but he had already seen it online. I said, my uncle came to buy your shirt. He's got it on. And he was like, man, that's love, man. Shout out to Unc, man. He repping the brand. But once I got off the phone, I kind of wanted to make it known to my uncle. I said, so if we would have bought a shirt at Jordan or at Lenox Mall, we can't call the CEO of Nike. We can't call Jordan. Right. I can pick up the phone and show our love and show it to Mike, and he's going to answer. Like, that type of support and that type of independent thing is priceless. Like, and that's worth more to me than supporting anybody that I don't know. To be able to show him my appreciation and be able to support, and that knowing he's going to pick up your call at any given time, that's an honor for me.
Yeah, I agree. That's exactly where I am mentally as well. I like supporting other artists' work, other like little restaurants, little mom and pop places where you can know the people rather than the corporations. I think that's a special thing.
Yeah.
So all of this sort of super fan stuff and collecting memorabilia, that led to a gallery show. Was that the Trap Museum?
Well, yeah, it transitioned. First, it just led to a house full of shit. Like, essentially, like it just led to a room full of just everything that the culture provided me. Of course, I keep it in nice order and kind of chronological order, and I'm a neat freak.
No doubt.
Yeah, I kind of keep it in order in that way. But once the idea for the Trap Music Museum came around to Tip and everyone, it was multiple people that were kind of suggesting me and saying that if this was going to be done, that I was one person that should be involved and that should be reached out to help. And so once I got the call, I looked in my collection that I have at home, and, you know, with trap music, while it is vast, it's kind of easy in my collection. I can just go to my box and say, oh, that's trap, put it in the bag, and I pull it up. I pull it out with every magazine cover that T.I. has been on, that Jeezy's been on, that any trap artist has been on. And then they got to pick out what they wanted to display in there. And then actually I got a whole almost like a whole room full of my stuff, from my collection, from autographs, CDs, tapes, magazine, DVDs. So yeah, it was just, they reached out to me, and then that was just supposed to be for a one-day thing. The space was for his album release party. And I think it was just so successful that they continued it on, and now we're here 2 years later.
So is it a permanent part of the museum now?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Do me a favor, define trap music, like from your perspective for me, because I'm guessing you were in Atlanta at the birth of it.
Yeah. So whereas gangster rap would, or reality rap as they called it, where it described the environment and the ecosystem that the rappers were living in, they were like our CNN. Trap music did that for Atlanta. So where the news wouldn't tell these stories or you wouldn't hear about it, you had trap music who was able to tell the stories of the inner communities, these neighborhoods that were underprivileged, and what went on in these cities and what went on in these communities, and how young Black men were able to kind of pay bills or support their mothers who were working multiple jobs. How were they able to support their families, and the obstacles that they chose to do, whether it be gangs, whether it be selling drugs, whether it been music. It just showed a reflection of the cities of Atlanta. And that's what I kind of got from it. It was just a pure reflection, no filter, no glamorization of it, but just raw, uncut stories of the truth and true stories of the inner cities of Atlanta. So
you would say that Atlanta's like reality rap, like what makes it trap is the fact that it's from Atlanta?
Yeah, and then the subject matter, like the drugs, selling drugs, evolving, using drugs as like almost like a business. Like most of these drug dealers could essentially be Fortune 500 company CEOs. You know, like you take somebody like Big Meech of BMF, like take the illegal drugs out of it. I mean, he was able to combine and create a ecosystem and a business of over 100 Black men that working in unity, and for any corporation to do that, that's hard. So for him to do that with that in that environment in Atlanta is a feat all in itself that should be acknowledged and respected.
Is there like a sound that you think helps define trap music too?
Yeah, heavy 808s, heavy bass is one of them. Sometimes a soul sample here and there, but it was really just the vocal tone of how the artists came across, because it wasn't preachy. I'll take preachy out of it. It wasn't loud. It was just it was like storytelling. It was like Slick Rick, but Slick Rick was a storyteller, and he was telling it where he was at. So imagine you take Slick Rick and put him in Bankhead of Atlanta. Like his stories and music would be totally different, and it would reflect the trap. And then that's really how I perceive it.
Yeah, I also feel like, from just my perspective, there's more of a soulful, I don't know if mellow is the right word, a more chill vibe than, say, like gangster rap from LA or something. It's quieter in its sound, I think is how I would say that. It's not aggressive. Yeah. It's more soulful. I guess that's how I'd say it. It's just more soulful sounding.
Yeah.
So this I'm gonna back up a second. This exhibit at the Trap Museum, that's permanent, and people can just go check it out whenever they want. Yep,
they actually like and every time I go, it's the line around the corner. You have an opportunity to go in there, support the museum, or they have another experience called Escape the Trap. So it's almost similarly like an escape room, but indeed, imagine you're in a trap house and the police are coming, and you got a limited amount of time to try to find a way out of this room. Where essentially, if you are successful, then you've essentially escaped the trap. So they have that kind of experience there as well to kind of take it to another level. They kind of do installations. Every month is a new installation. They recently did one for Future. So inside you go in and it's like a spaceship. It's purple. It's black light.
Oh, shit.
So yeah, so they
I want to get down there. I've been dying to get to that museum.
Yeah, so they always have these different experiences and pop-ups, and sometimes they do a sip and trap and music parties there. Sometimes I go to album release parties and they hold them there too. So it's multiple ways they're able to use that space, and I love it. I love supporting them, and I love the staff over there too.
Have you exhibited at any other galleries in the Atlanta area?
Buckhead Library. Then a couple art shows that spoke on civil rights. I guess when Troy Davis was a person that kind of hello.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, it was an art show speaking about civil rights and police brutality. So I was able to put some art in a couple exhibits like that, but that's about it. Yeah, the Buckhead Library and that type of thing.
Have you seen the new exhibit at the High Museum? It's the history of civil rights through children's storybook illustrations. It's like a collection of illustrations from different books, different illustrated books that tell the story of the civil rights movement. Have you seen that?
No. How recent was that? Is it like
I just saw it 2 weeks ago.
Oh no! Yeah, and I drive by there every day.
I recommend it. There's some really great stuff in there. One of the things that I was really happy to see in there, there was a comic book that John Lewis did.
Yeah, I got that. Yeah.
Okay, called March. So my friend published it. His company is called Top Shelf. They published the book. So I got to hear all kinds of really great stories of him, like doing the book tour with John Lewis. But the artist Nate Powell is also someone I know. But they had probably about 5 pages from that series in there as well. So I took my kids, and it was a pretty moving experience. And we went on a Sunday, and I want to say that the election had been called the Saturday right before it. So it was pretty powerful to go and see that. It felt really good.
Yeah. I love going to the High. The last exhibit I went, I think it was Virgil Abloh from Off-White did an exhibit there. Then they had the John Michael Basquiat exhibit there.
Yeah.
I went to Calls. I saw Calls do an exhibit there when he had his statues.
I wish I would have seen that exhibit. They still have a giant. They have a giant. They still have something of his there, and they have a Kenny Scharf. But yeah, it's a great museum. But that exhibit is really worth checking out. I found it really powerful, really good.
And I influence everybody that I talk to like become a member of that too, of the High. Like it's definitely worth the money.
Yeah, it's a dope museum. So back to trap music. So you were at the now famous Versus battle in Atlanta, and you said it was at Magic City, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And that was Jeezy and Gucci Mane.
Where it originally was going to be Jeezy versus T.I., but T.I. gracefully bowed out respectfully. So I definitely, I saw that he realized that the culture wanted that a bit more. So for him to kind of bow out and not take that moment for himself is very noble.
So he bowed out so Gucci could get in?
Yep.
Oh, that's awesome. So tell me, what was that? Well, let's back up and let's tell the listeners who may not know that there's history there between the two.
Yeah. So maybe over 20 years ago, they both were kind of new in the music industry, new rumblings of each other. And then one time at Patchwork Studios, Gucci Mane pulls up to Jeezy's session. They introduced to each other. And they're just to introduce, but then they heard a track that Zaytoven, the producer, made, and they decided to jump on a song together, So Icy.
Right.
And so from there, that song was very big, and of course, locally in Atlanta first, but then it kind of blew up. And it was a very big turning point in their careers for both of them, because Jeezy was on the heels of his debut album. So I think the initial riff was that I think Jeezy wanted the album, or asked if the song So Icy could be part of his project. And I think that was declined by Gucci Mane. And then kind of everything kind of transitioned as a result of not happening. And then there was just friction after that. There was an attempted robbery kind of thing. There was diss songs between the two of them. An apparent hit put out on one, a hit on his chain. It just really kind of split Atlanta up, because there's people that was friends with both of the circles. So it was just even people outside of Atlanta, it made people kind of pick a side or pick who is your favorite. And that definitely created a divide in Atlanta, where me, myself, I kind of listened to both. I never picked a side. I had a preference to who I liked it more, but it was never a chance about just because I love Jeezy more that I didn't listen to Gucci Mane. But there's some people who feel that they picked a side and they never supported the other side. So it definitely created a divide in the city. So leading up to the verses, and 20 years later, even leading up to it, there was name calling, and there was always times where they tried to link back up and rehash or kind of reconsole their issues. DJ Drama actually had them both on the radio at one point and talking about it, but it just kind of faded by the wayside, and it was still issues between the two. And then before Gucci went to prison, there was like a rant he went on, and it kind of just F everybody in the game, F everybody, and it was just kind of made it go left. So years later when this came about, I remember an interview where Jeezy was saying that he kind of reached out for the culture. He was willing to do it, and Gucci had declined it. So I guess they heard talk, and then I seen a comment where Gucci said he wanted $1 million for it, which everybody was like, that's probably not going to happen. But I guess that may be what happened, because they had initially changed it from T.I. to Jeezy to Jeezy and Gucci, and then there we have the verses.
So what was it like in the room? I mean, I imagine this is 20 years in the making. Yeah,
it was definitely like if you ever watched 300, and it's like where you're in that dome, the Athens in Greece, and everybody's watching for a battle, and they're waiting for the Hawk and the Thor to battle, and
right.
And they got their Thors, and they got their arrows waiting for something to jump off. It definitely felt like that, and it definitely was a side too. There was a Jeezy side, like even with the way they kind of made the entrances. If you were with Jeezy, you came through the back door. If you was with Gucci, you came through the front door. You kind of went to this side, and you kind of went to that side, and there was definitely a side. But the best part that I kind of took note about it was the DJs who were DJ Holiday was a DJ for Gucci Mane, and then DJ Ace was Jeezy's DJ. And whereas they were, battling each other, there was a camaraderie there, and there was a mutual respect there. So it kind of let me know that, while these artists had issues, that at the end of the day, this was something bigger than that, and that they were kind of going to make sure we got history that night. And that's what happened. I mean, there was moments where it kind of got real disrespectful and low below the belt, but that's part of hip hop.
Sure.
And then kind of Jeezy kind of transitioned and picked that tone up, and it turned into an entertaining piece of history. And for me to be like right there, and like my phone was going off with screenshots, people sending me screenshots like, how did you get in there? And what is that you? And yo, you be everywhere. And like, it just added to this myth of this, like people have started calling me like the hip hop Where's Waldo? Like, like where is he not at? Like, how does he get to be in all these places? And he was just here. And does he have a clone? Like, it's just like this new myth that's going on Instagram that kind of, like Forrest Gump. I am hip hop Forrest Gump.
Dude, you're an impressive man. I mean, to see like how sort of woven into the fabric of Atlanta hip hop. It's impressive. It's awesome. So that event, that Versus for Atlanta, I saw a lot of posts the morning after of just local Atlanta people. It was a very kind of emotional and big deal, and it seemed like the result of it was so positive that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of funny. I was born outside of New York and grew up all around New York hip hop. And I've lived in Atlanta now for 16, 17 years. And I feel like I live in the capital of hip hop right now.
Yep.
And I love that. I love, like, having seen it from its early days in New York to living here now and kind of just being a part of it tangentially right now is really exciting. I love being
because it was really, like you said, like it was really all eyes on us. Like they even had the results, and it was like the most views. And even when I was outside in the parking lot getting my COVID test, people were watching it on their phones, and it reached 1.7 million before the artists weren't even in the building or on the cameras yet. So,
oh shit, yeah, that's crazy. So they were giving out COVID tests in order to get in. Is that what that was?
Yes. Yeah.
Awesome. That's good to hear.
Yeah.
Cool, man. So what's the future in NuFace?
Well, right now we are focused on nostalgia. My new hip hop exhibit, housed on 140 Peachtree, where it's a whole old bank that was built in 1911. And it has a bank vault in the bottom floor. And there's other 3 floors. And so I filled this up with most of my hip hop collection over the years. For the last 30 years, all my collection, my autographs, my merch, my ticket stubs. And then I've also, because it's an art gallery, I filled it up with some of my favorite artists' pieces on the wall that were hip hop inspired. So you'll see pieces of like a Jeezy or painted T.I. pieces, or painted Jeezy pieces, Andre 3000, Outkast. So
all stuff you did?
No, some of my other favorite artists.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. Is that, I saw on your Instagram, is that the show Busta Rhymes? You were like showing Busta Rhymes?
Yeah. Well, he was a guest on 85 South show. So when they have guests, I usually kind of at the end, they'll kind of give me a heads up, and I'll go in my collection and pull out everything pertaining to the artist that they let me know is coming. So what you've seen on Instagram was probably at the end of the show, and I put out every Busta Rhymes CD, every book, every cassette tape. And so even that, as recent as that was, I was able to put that in the nostalgia exhibit and give them a whole little wall and section to commemorate that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What about artistically? Is there anything you're looking to get into in the near future?
Getting back to putting my artwork that I draw and transferring them on clothing and T-shirts, and because I started with NuFace Clothing, which was a clothing line with T-shirts and hats and things like that. So I'm probably going to transition from the nostalgia and back and kind of introduce the merch again and rebrand the merch. Okay,
awesome. Well, anything you were hoping we'd talk about that we didn't address yet?
That's pretty much it. It's definitely dope to see this piece of work here, because this is bringing back memories of how I used to just look at my cousin draw Spider-Man and Hawk, and like I just remember tracing. It went from me tracing to drawing. Like I would trace his stuff and take it to school, and the attention that I got, I was like, I like this.
Yeah, dude, that's what being an artist is.
This is the attention I like. And then, but what happened is people, maybe they knew, maybe they didn't, but then they wanted you to draw on the spot. And then it was like, oh, okay, I need to figure out how to really do this in case I'm challenged on the spot. And so that's where I transitioned, not to more comics, but like true animation, like one line drawings, like a Bugs Bunny or Simpsons or So then I can draw a quick sketch of that and make everybody happy, and everybody like, oh, this guy's good. And word of mouth is like, I'm the creative. And it got one, now I wouldn't say bad, but my handwriting was so good, I started charging for cheat sheets. Like I can draw the smallest handwriting.
Yep. I did that too, man.
And I can do cheat sheets. And I write cheat sheets for people and put answers on the smallest piece of paper, and people could read them because they learned about my handwriting. And I can forge, this is bad, I can forge back in my high school, you had a schedule on the back of your ID. You would get a sticker where you can write your classes, but people would come to me and I would make it the same way, but I would give them lunch. People love lunch period. So maybe they wanted 2 lunches period, or they just wanted an opportunity to go in lunch whenever they wanted. So I would draw in their schedule where lunch could be whatever period they wanted, you know?
Right.
So that was cool. I used my art for, you know, I wouldn't say illegal, but I kind of help people kind of skip class.
Yeah, I did the same shit. I had these pens. They're called rapidograph pens. They're technical drawing pens, and the smallest tip was like writing with a single strain of hair. So I could put like pages of notes on the tiniest little piece of paper. I got by doing that shit too.
Yeah.
All right. Cool, man. Well, thank you for doing this, NuFace. I hope to meet you in person one day, because we seem to run in so many similar circles, and we're both artists, so it would make sense to meet up. Are you still there? Oh, did I lose him? All right. Well, I think I did. I didn't think I lost NuFace. Probably bad reception. But thank you all for listening. And hopefully NuFace will be back for another one day. And I will see you all later. This is the Inkpulp podcast. This is the Inkpulp podcast. Comics, hip hop,